Welcome to the Human History Project's quick overview of the Middle Ages, a time that lasted for around 1,000 years and shaped much of the world we know today. Whether you're just curious or starting to learn about this fascinating period, we've got you covered. So let's dive right in. First things first, what exactly were the Middle Ages and why are they called that? The Middle Ages is a period in European history that lasted from around the 4th and 5th centuries to the 14th and 15th centuries, depending on where in Europe you lived. But why middle? Well, it sits right in between two major periods: the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century and the beginning of the Renaissance in the 15th century. Imagine it as the middle chapter of a big long book. The fall of Rome in 476 AD marks the end of the ancient world and the start of this new era. For many years, this time was seen as a dark age because there were fewer written records and big political changes. But historians now understand that the Middle Ages were full of exciting developments and important changes. Now, let's talk about the early Middle Ages, the first part of this period. This time lasted roughly from the 5th to the 10th centuries. It began with the fall of the Western Roman Empire and saw Europe break into small, fractured kingdoms. During the early Middle Ages, there were a lot of changes. In the 6th century, the Christian church became very powerful and began spreading throughout Europe. You also had the rise of powerful figures like Charlemagne, who united parts of Europe and helped bring about a kind of revival of learning and culture. Let's also not forget the Vikings. These daring seafarers from Scandinavia sailed across Europe, raiding towns and trading with many different cultures. The early Middle Ages were definitely full of action with some scary moments. This period saw the rise of a social and economic system called feudalism, which was based on land control. In the meantime, a new religion, Islam, was rising in the Arabian Peninsula. With a political movement, Islam quickly spread through the Middle East and North Africa, taking over Jerusalem and building a Muslim site of worship in what had been and continues to be the Holy Land for both Jews and Christians for centuries. Now we move on to the High Middle Ages, which lasted from about the 11th to the 13th centuries. This was a time of growth and change, with Europe becoming more stable and prosperous. The High Middle Ages saw the rise of powerful kingdoms and the building of massive cathedrals, like the famous Notre Dame in Paris. In the meantime, there had been multiple accounts, which we know of from primary sources, of violent behavior towards Christians performing pilgrimages to Jerusalem. When the Byzantine emperor sent a letter to Pope Urban II asking for help, he called upon the knights of the empire to defend their fellow Christians and retake control of the Holy Land. This marked the beginning of the Crusades, a series of holy wars where Europeans tried to retake control of holy sites that had been conquered by Muslim armies in the Middle East. One of the most important events of this time was the Battle of Hastings in 1066, where William the Conqueror from Normandy took control of England. This marked a huge shift in English society and the way Europe as a whole was governed. Another major event in the High Middle Ages was the signing of the Magna Carta, a document that limited the power of the English monarch and introduced many ideas and values that would be the foundation for many human rights laws and constitutions centuries later. Next up, we have the Late Middle Ages, a time of both challenges and change. This period, from the 14th to 15th centuries, saw major events like the Black Death, a deadly plague that wiped out about 1/3 of Europe's population. While the Black Death was devastating, it also changed Europe in surprising ways. With fewer people, wages went up, and new ideas started to spread. But it wasn't just the plague. There were also wars, like the Hundred Years' War between England and France, which stretched over 116 years. During this time, you also had important figures like Joan of Arc, a French heroine who helped turn the tide of the war. During this time, peasants who were being overworked as a result of the population of peasants falling with the Black Death began the Peasants' Revolt, one of the earliest examples of oppressed people revolting against those in power. The late Middle Ages were tough, but they also paved the way for huge transformations in society. So how did the Middle Ages end? Well, by the late 15th century, Europe was changing quickly. The Renaissance, a time of great cultural and intellectual growth, began in Italy and spread across Europe. This period of rebirth brought about new art, science, and ways of thinking that would change the world forever. One of the key moments was the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg, which allowed books to be printed more easily and at a much lower cost, spreading knowledge across Europe. With these new ideas, the Middle Ages slowly gave way to the modern era. And that's a quick look at the Middle Ages. From the fall of Rome to the rise of the Renaissance, this period shaped much of what we know today. Whether it was the rise of powerful kings, the spread of religion, or the constantly changing borders, the Middle Ages were full of fascinating events and stories. If you enjoyed this overview, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more fun history videos. If you're curious to dive deeper into any of these events or access a bank of teaching resources, be sure to check out our website, which is linked in the description. See you next time, and keep exploring history.